long it takes for us to get live and all that.
Look at live.
You got to turn it sideways, David. That's how you get the full effect.
Dave's got the swag.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, I love that cover. That is
That's
a
not just a
wonderful
gun
piece of
making
promo
shadow
art.
on it right there.
That's a Phil Noto
Old
cover.
1950s.
Yeah. Well,
Or 40s.
so David, I hope you're not going to be reading Hawkeye comics all night because we're here to talk about Hawkeye the TV show. Yes,
I can read and talk.
Well,
He draws and talks all the time. Come on now.
both of those are debatable.
Should it be
No,
drawing
I had to
classroom?
get that in there. I had to get that in there.
There's that
Okay.
unmistakable sound of a marker cap coming off and hitting the table, and then David's sound does that all the time.
But what I love is that he inevitably will pop up like 20, 30 minutes in. He'll just pop up with this amazing piece of art. Like, when did you do? Oh, you did that like right now. Awesome. But yeah, we are here. It's HawkTalk episode 3, but we're talking about Hawkeye episode 4, which debuted this morning on Disney Plus. And yeah, it's I'm going to do this. I'm going to do something possibly unprecedented. Because we got some stuff to talk about.
Whoa!
We got spoilers.
Just
to
go
talk
right
about.
into it.
Oh, right away.
Oh
Wow.
man! Oh
Okay.
yeah. So
We're just gonna
Spider-Man shows up,
drop
right?
yeah.
And then
All
what else are
three
we
of
supposed
them.
to talk about?
All
I
3
know.
Spider-Men
Yeah.
showed up.
All
No.
at
Yeah.
once. It's really
Yeah.
nuts how they just put
Zack
an
Snyder
entirety-
directed this episode,
Don't it- when-
kids.
Yeah.
They're
It
all
was
attached by
weird.
Venom. All 3
Couldn't you
Spider-Men
tell
are
them
attached
that it
by
was
Venom.
directed by Zack
Yeah.
Snyder when they all sat
With-
around and started screaming Martha at each other? Because
Oh, wouldn't that be something?
And they
Oh,
just
yeah.
started like dropping F-bombs and like there's blood everywhere.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, why is
Disney's-
this so violent?
Disney's cutting the show after this week. They can't do it anymore after 1.5 F-bombs. It's amazing.
And I'm starting to understand how they feel. No, anyway, okay. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Here's the thing. The reason I wanted to get into spoilers is because the first couple episodes we've talked about, we've got the premise, everything is laid out. So we're pretty firmly into, everybody who's watching the show knows, what's going on. We don't have to reiterate everything. So I think what we need to talk about is the meat of the individual episode. This is not exactly filler, but it is not as
Hangout.
action packed. It's a hangout
Yeah.
episode. There's some really nice action at
Towards
the
the
end,
end,
a little bit of espionage, but I think the heart of this, like so many of the other winning moments of the other 2 episodes, is just, Barton and Bishop hanging out, kind of having these pseudo heart-to-hearts with some, snark mixed in. But I think this is a really lovely episode. But I do want to talk briefly, because before we went live and before most of the panelists jumped on, we were talking about the quote-unquote surprise guest star.
Yeah.
Surprise, really?
Well, that's why I put it in quotes.
Imagine if it was. Imagine if there was no post-credit scene in Black Widow. We would all be losing our fucking minds.
That would have been cool.
But here's the thing. Here's what I wanted to get to. The moment that this cameo, whatever, was heralded, I think would have been a beautiful moment. Not necessarily in terms of no Black Widow stinger, but just if the internet didn't exist.
Yeah.
Because if I had no idea
wouldn't
that
that be
Florence
something?
Pew was showing up in this series, then I might have had that kind of a memory, falling down the memory hole of oh yeah, she saw the Hawkeye picture 6 months ago. And they're like, oh, that'd be a great callback.
Yeah.
But we've been talking about this since episode 1, which is only a few weeks ago, of where's Florence Pugh? She's been on IMDb for either episodes 1 through 6 or 4 through 6 or whatever you want to believe. So when this mysterious figure shows up on the roof, it's a great moment of dialogue. It says the script writers wrote as if no one was going to have any idea what was going on, because there's a fight in Maya's apartment between Maya and Kate. And meanwhile, Clint is on a rooftop, across the street. And he's like, I'm fighting Maya. And Kate's like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm fighting Maya. And then Clint's like, well, who the hell am I fighting? And I'm like,
Dun, dun,
oh,
dun.
you're fighting Yelena.
Yeah.
And then we get the brief shot of the Black Widow gauntlets with the those red electric stingers. I'm like, that's cool. And the mask off. This should have been a graduated stepping stones to an oh my god, I can't believe this moment. And it was like, when's Florence gonna take off the mask?
Imagine if we're all sitting here thinking they're not bringing Scarlett Johansson back from the dead with all the multiverse talk. When the bracelets start charging up, you're like, wait a second. If we didn't know, we would all be losing our minds. Remember
Notice
when
they were red,
remember
not
when-
blue.
remember when Jonathan Majors showed up in Loki? I don't know how
Oh
they held
yeah,
that as a
that's
surprise,
right.
but
We had no
we were all
idea that
losing
he
our
was going to be
minds.
there.
That was
Yeah.
wonderful. So it could be done, but it just can't be done lately. So
Now,
And
now,
Don-
Don, I like
a
where
week
you're
from now,
going with
we're having a
this.
good time.
I like where you're going with this, Don, because imagine if Florence Pugh showing up was just a ruse and they actually found a way to get Scarlett Johansson.
Oh man,
Because I like the idea of the multiverse Black Widow because
Right.
one of the
Like
themes, and we're only
curly
four-
red-haired Iron Man 2 Black Widow, like totally throw us off. It'd be amazing.
any iteration. Because, well, even, because we're talking multiverse, it's conceivable that you could get another actress to come in and play this part,
Right.
I
You
guess.
could have Lake Bell step in with
there you go.
Ooh, like that. But just the idea of, playing with, introducing the multiverse early, because we all know it's coming, but we don't necessarily know that it's already here and playing out in this limited series. But yeah, I like to what we were talking about before we jumped on, the three of us who were in this discussion. Even though I didn't like the way that it was revealed, I did like the fact that she pops on, you see her out of the mask, and then she does this cool dive off of the building, and then she disappears. She doesn't take things over. My concern is sort of what we were talking about last week, which is, okay, so, and this seems to be a problem with a lot of the Marvel shows, a lot of the Star Wars shows when we get to this point, is they've built so much up. How are they going to pack X, 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 and X into 2 more episodes or 1 more episode? I have no idea where the show is going, but this was such a cool hangout episode that my only regret is that it's not a full 24 episode traditional TV season, because I could watch these guys do their thing forever. I'm going to stop ranting. I'm going to unrudify myself and say, welcome to HawkTalk. I'm here with Earth's Mightiest Critics, and they are ... Mike Crowley of 25 Years Later, and you'll probably agree, Annie Banks of Truckload of Comics and Movie Web, Don Shanahan of 25 Years Later, and the Cinephile Hissy Fit podcast, the other half of which was unable to join us tonight, but we were sending our best love out to Will. Hopefully you'll catch up or maybe even join us in the chat. I don't know. But and then David Fowley of Keeping It Real, and Mark the Movie Man Krawczyk from the Spoiler Room and Special Mark Productions. Yes, that's you.
That's me. Yeah.
I had to end with the DC show. No.
Well, of course.
So Don,
Yeah.
since we've already been through the spoiler looking glass, why don't you spell out what happens leading up to the spoiler in this episode?
So I forget the beginning. No, so we're at that point where the plan is in place that needs to be done to retrieve 2 sets of things. Am I right? Like we're, our cliffhanger from last episode. So sword drawn to Clint's neck. Here comes our guy that we all consider to be the swordsman, waiting for this moment to happen. And that's kind of a nice rug pull where you think something's going to be an immediate showdown, and it's like, oh, welcome into our home. Let's have some dinner and talk about my daughter, or my stepdaughter, or whatever, thing she is. So it's a lot of posturing and talk, and a lot of supposedly a place to have confession, what I've been up to lately, and why is there an Avenger next to you in your place? And then it kind of evolves into what we've kind of already been suggesting and talking about. We have a hangout episode of these 2 trying to hash the plan to finish the job, because there's this watch shown to be of some importance. We got a glimpse of it back in the first episode, and apparently we were wondering what this watch is, and it's also a piece that needs to be recovered to kind of close the book on whatever Ronin is, because our guy Clint is able to retrieve that sword, which I feel like was too easy. And by the time they go to the place they need to get to the last thing, which is this watch, it is Echo's apartment, and in doing so, hijinks ensue to the point where we have a 4-pronged fight between rooftops, decks, zip lines, and it's a pretty cool little ending because Yelena shows up and stakes get higher.
Don't forget the LARPers.
Yes, the LARPers return.
Too late. Yeah. The Go Get My Coffee crew is there.
So this whole time I was wondering how Clint was going to get his new costume, and that's how we get it. The LARPers are going to make him a new costume.
But will we see that this season, or is that going to be?
Probably
That'll be the last episode.
Last episode, yeah.
But
It's
will we
going to
even
be
see
his
it, or
Falcon
is...
and Winter Soldier outfit.
I think we will see it, because there was
Oh my god!
There was that scene where they were back to back in the previews at Rockefeller on the skater rink, where
But was
and
that
he's
the
wearing.
Was that the new costume? Because I saw it looked like, I don't know, it just looked like Kate's purple thing that she's been wearing.
Yeah, no, they were both purple. It was the new costume he was wearing.
Oh, okay.
She has that first jacket with the patch on the shoulder. The one that I had the patch on the shoulder with the zippers on the collar, and then it transitions into like later in the series. I'm assuming either next episode or the episode after that, they're going to show that final look where it's the full length.
Yeah.
It's still the purple tritone, and then it has the gloved hands.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty handy that the LARPers are all made up of, fire department folks and police officers. They can go and retrieve his trick arrows and everything. And okay.
Now help me out with this because I missed something. What happened to all of his trick arrows? Why can they find them? Because I know that there was a big car chase last episode where they're driving around and using a bunch of them. I thought they used all of them. So what is there to retrieve? I missed it.
Good question.
Yeah, I was wondering that too because I'm like, wait, if you're Hawkeye and you have a bunch of arrows, why would you just use them all up? And wouldn't you have more? And I was kind of like, why does he need those? Does that draw back to him being the Ronin? And it draws back to all the equipment he had. It's that, and that's what's going to get him in trouble. I was a little.
Or who supplied him with those trick arrows? SHIELD, Tony Stark.
See, what I got from this was that at the end of that car chase, after they'd used up all the arrows, that was kind of it. Yeah. And so he would have to be resourceful because you can't just go to Tony Stark or whoever or SHIELD, whatever, and say, get me some more arrows. He's kind of on his own. But I didn't understand what there was to get and why the LARPers were important. I probably have to go back and watch the episode again. Before I do, well, I'm not going to do that right in the middle of the conversation. That'd be rude. We have tons of comments here from Sajiwa.
Oh, hey now.
Hello from NYC. Hello, Sajiwa. Hey. Filmmaker from NYC dropping by for a bit. Yes.
Showing off, that's right.
Yeah.
Does he have anything to say about Florence Pew?
I know, right?
He did. I don't know if you saw on Twitter today. A wonderful callback. I mentioned the surprise guest star, and he said she's a pretty good regular actor.
That is a great kick in the seat callback there. Great,
yes. Good acting by that guy.
Guy, Jack. Yeah.
And then oh yeah for the callback, I imagine.
She's a great regular actor.
There he is.
What the heck?
Speaking of great regular actors, I want to just give another shout out to Tony Dalton as Jack the Swordsman, because I feel like we were almost at a disservice that we saw him acting all sinister in that wine cellar auction, because the scene where they're hanging out in this episode in the living room, there's that awkward conversation, and then later with he and Vera Farmiga just kind of like horsing around,
do that little dance,
doing the dance. He sells it as this goofy kind of, sort of upper crust, but, well-meaning guy who's just kind of an idiot. And he wants to ingratiate himself with his, possible future daughter-in-law. I almost wish I didn't know that she had reason to suspect him of anything. Sure. But it also calls to mind, like, if he can be that convincing that even the audience member who's like, no, I know, I haven't not even read the comics, that he's evil. What else is he capable of? Back to that idea.
I like that. Well, just on Tony Dalton, I like that we have a villain that's not immediately, head first hyperdrive gear to straight evil. He has the mustache that he could twirl if he wanted to every 4 seconds, but he doesn't. He is completely slow playing this. And how often do we ever see a true slow playing villain that he could at any moment, even with the sword drawn last episode, that could have been the usual snapping point of, my sword's out. Let me show you how good I'm at it. And like shit's about to go down. He still, even on that moment, scales it back, does the lovey-dovey thing, and is just waiting in the wings. And I like that about what they're doing with this character and Dalton's slow play of the acting.
It would have been interesting if, because in the comics, Swordsman, Jack's character, basically trained Clint, in archery and everything. And so it would have been interesting if they made somewhat of a connection, like he's got the Ronin sword to his neck and going, Clint? Jack? Hey, man.
That would be cool. That would have been really cool.
Really fun.
That would have been a good angle.
This is nuts. How many years has it been? This is crazy.
Yeah.
Now, kind of going off of that, I want to see when we actually get Kazi in full clown.
I don't know if we will.
You don't think we will?
Nah, with 2 more episodes, I doubt it. I mean, if there was a season 2, maybe, or maybe that'll happen in Echo. Yeah, not sure.
Or maybe it'll be the I don't know anything about Clown, really, except for the tidbits I picked up here from you guys, but maybe that's the episode 6, post-credit scene of everything's been resolved and he comes crawling out of the flames of whatever battle happens, and he's I don't know, got a Joker mask and he becomes a clown. I don't know what his deal is, but
I got these scars.
But back to that sword, because as it's mentioned, Clint does pick up the Ronin sword. It's like kind of leaving it there. It is established in this episode that Jack is the head of the company that is using the tracksuits to launder money, and that's all connected to Maya, and she's got a vendetta against Ronin. What if there's a tracking device on that sword?
I mean, you'd think there would be.
Conveniently so.
Yeah, or
Elena does show up on a random New York rooftop just in time.
What if Jack was the one in the Ronin outfit who killed Maya's dad?
Oh my!
Now we're stretching.
Now that would be somewhere to go.
Fun. That would make the slow play even more slow play.
Yeah.
I love that idea, and now because I'm 99% sure that's not what's going to happen, I can only be disappointed in episodes 5 and 6. Thank you, David.
Because it might not. I mean, it might not be Clint in that scene, flashback scene.
Because we don't get the like the close up of the eyes, or like there's no big unmasking or anything. It's just Ronin, right?
Yeah.
Mark, DC Shill, what did you make of Hawkeye episode 4?
I'm digging the parts where there isn't actually action. In all honesty, in this series works best, as we mentioned, the hangout scene. We don't get often, especially from the MCU. I mean, we've gotten it a little bit exploration, like with Iron Man 3, but I think they handled it kind of clunky. The fallout for the regular humans who have gone through crap for years. I mean, the blip, they don't have superpowers or anything. I mean, Thor, yeah, he got fat, but he was, jokingly in that. But, for him, here we've got kind of the common guy, out of everybody in the Avengers, he's pretty much your blue collar superhero. And you get that, and you get that wonderful conversation. And this is the one for me that he gave me chills twice in this film, in this episode. Once where he's talking about what he actually was, because everybody throughout the first 3 episodes have been praising him for a hero, and he's trying to be humble in that. And then we find out in this episode why. He says he's very much in touch with reality of what he actually is, which was a weapon. He drops that wonderful line, just delivered beautifully, of how he was a weapon, and just the right people pointing him in the right direction, I think it is, or good people put him in the, but he recognizes he's a weapon that could go either way. He's very much in touch with that, and that we now know is what's been bugging him. But the way he just delivers that whole thing, and then also with Natasha of not pulling the arrow for her, just that whole conversation in the living room during the Christmas party, I loved. And then the other part was where he was in the back seat of the car, where we get a touch of what Hawkeye was as Ronin, because we see the tail end of Ronin in was it Endgame. We see the tail end of Ronin. Here we get kind of Hawkeye. We get Ronin sitting behind the car. Oh yeah, you're looking for this and this, but he's just no emotion. He's just like, you are almost on the edge. Like, he'd really kill this guy in an instant if he really had to, without blinking. Those are the parts I enjoyed the most. The fight, yeah, it was fun, but I didn't quite like how it was directed. But, the parts for me work where they're actually doing the character bit, because Haley Steinfeld and Renner have some great chemistry, especially by this episode. And I'm just digging these conversations, this exploration into the common superhero and the effects of years of all the extreme cosmic crap he's gone through.
Well said.
I was a little disappointed she didn't pull out like Die Hard. Instead, she pulled out, Santa Claus by Disney.
Yeah.
Maybe Harold Ramis is the Ice Harvest or something.
Hey, Die Hard is now technically a Disney property as well with the Fox.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
True. Yeah, because they
Fox.
own
20th Century Studios.
By next year, they're gonna have rights to all of our lives too. So get ready.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll take
honey, I'm already there.
I'll take
There's
some
a
of
lot
those
of perfect movie,
checks.
which she's
Any
in,
negative reviews, someone disappears.
Spidey and his snipers. They're gonna come find you.
Yeah.
Next weekend, when we're all leaving the
Howard
park,
the Duck.
we're all walking out of the theater. I'm gonna be on edge. I'm gonna be looking around.
Yeah. Did you like it? Good.
I can't answer that question.
In
Use
addition
your textbook
to
line of "I'm still processing it,"
Oh.
that
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. We're just gonna be standing with a notepad, their hands shaking. Hey guys.
Well, that's actually a good plug because next week, Earth's Mightiest Critics will be back with a review of Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Earth's Spideyest Critics.
Yeah. Rebranding.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I
sir.
don't know.
My
But yeah,
spidey sense tingled, and I knew that joke was coming.
make sure I can see both your hands, Mike. Anyway, so I want to say, as much as I like the Ronin callbacks, the thing that I think was, well, not exactly understated because some of it is way out in your face, but this show is always maintains its focus on Clint and his family and his desperate need to get back to them. Not just, they show the family again and there's like the fourth phone call is like, Dad's not coming home for another day. But, Vera Farmiga has a wonderful moment where she's seeing Clint out of their apartment and she's like, you've got a family, right? Basically saying, you wouldn't want me storming into your life and kidnapping your daughter or sons and taking them on some kind of a dangerous adventure. And he's like, yeah, understood. I have to finish this mission, but I'll keep her out of it. And it doesn't quite work out that way, but that's because, you don't tell Kate Bishop you can't come with it until the end of this episode. And I imagine that's not going to work out because we saw them back to back in Rockefeller Plaza. But yeah, and down to it's totally corny, but It's a Wonderful Life that we see that a couple of times, and the whole idea of family there, very moving stuff. Yeah, I'm with the consensus here. The action is kind of the most disappointing part of this episode. I think they did it better last episode. But that's because this episode isn't about that.
Do they need that in every episode though? I don't, especially with the narrative that they're choosing. And they're doing this priority, which is very unorthodox for them in the sense where not every other scene is 15 layers of CGI on top of each other. And it's so much that it drowns itself out. And it's so monotonous that it drowns itself out. Whereas this one, like we've been saying, and I will beat the dead horse on this, is that this is about human connection and human tenderness and family and that rawness. And I'd rather see, I honestly, as fun as it would be to see more of these trick arrows and these elaborate fight scenes and these impressive fight scenes, I would give me another half an episode of Clint and Kate trying to flick things down the hall and hit the TV and stuff like that. I want to see that. That's what they're about. Their chemistry is where it's strongest, not when they're fighting back to back, because you can pair up any two team members and have them fight back to back and go, wow, that's really cool. Whereas there's that deeper connection. I think that's the rekindling and almost the passing of the torch from partner of Natasha Romanoff onto partner of Kate Bishop, which is pivotal in his moving on and pivotal in his character development of letting this post-endgame grief go.
Well, Mark, you and I were kind of talking about this last night on your Patreon show. By the way, folks, if you want to support Mark's channel, go to patreon.com. And is it Special Mark or Spoiler Room?
No, it's Special Mark Productions.
Okay.
So
because every week we do a live stream about different movies. This year
He's got
it's
kids
canon
to
themed.
feed, guys.
That's true. We do a half-hour pre-show. That's for Patreon listeners only. But we were talking about kind of the Marvel spectacle and the diminishing returns of the box office, especially in this, even as we're coming out of the pandemic era, you've got movies where they're still spending $250 million to make these things. And then you got stuff that's coming out and maybe making 73 opening weekend. It's not recouping anything. And we were sort of talking about, we're noticing the emergence in Marvel of an attention to street level heroes, whether it's She-Hulk, who's an attorney, whether it's Charlie Cox being announced as Daredevil, kind of popping back in, gaining more prominence, talk of the Punisher. You don't need $1 billion CGI Thanos level effects to tell really compelling stories with these characters. And I think that's kind of what we're going with Clint Barton. And as unfortunate as we won't be able to necessarily go and see all these really expensive, beautiful looking cartoon movies, we will possibly get more of this drama and comedy and real character driven stuff on television. So I'm all about it.
The DC shill is going to just point out that Disney is refining with these shows, especially with Hawkeye, refining the formula that initially was tried by CW, in all honesty. They're doing it better, but the CW did the same thing with Arrow. Arrow was not CGI fest. It was guys, street level fighters for so long. It wasn't really CGI till you got the Flash in and Supergirl. But if you look at the first few seasons of Arrow, which I think are probably the best before it just rinse, washed, repeated, that's what they relied on. They didn't have a big budget. They're trying this out. And Disney seems to be taking that approach and refining it because we've had like 10 years of all this work. But I like where they're going with it. Give me more street level heroes in CGI fest. I mean,
now, Mark, going off of that, you make a really good point because Hawkeye can be seen as an equivalent to Oliver Queen in a way, without obvious deviances between the two characters. Do you feel like this Hawkeye series is taking after the progression of Arrow when it was on CW? Or do you think that the two properties are so adamant in defining their own differences?
I think their own differences because I think it has the spirit of Arrow. It's just they decided it's the reflection of Arrow where Oliver Queen, I mean, it was depressing watching him. No matter which episode. Don't get me wrong. I thought he played the character great and I love what they did with him for the first season. But we're here, just the opposite. Clint has a lot of heart and he's actually not running around emo and depressed all the time. He just wants to move on, but the baggage, he just can't cut loose no matter how hard he tries. But he's got a loving family. There's warmth there. So it's kind of, the spirit of Arrow, but it's like the mirror version of it. And,
So if I want to be more depressed and I want to up my dosage of antidepressants to watch Arrow, is that what you're saying?
Arrow has they've got some uplifting stuff, but there's a reason why
it was soap opera.
Yeah, it served its purpose of establishing the CW universe, and then you got the happy stuff with Flash, especially, and Supergirl is super happy. And then when you got those two shows, and then you had Arrow got reflected even more dark. Even at its darkest with Flash, it still is lighter. And so this has kind of that spirit, and I think they've just refined that and made it its own. But you can see where the groundwork was laid, where they're like, oh, you can do that with you can make a compelling story for superheroes that's not Batman, that's a ground level, hero. But you can make him happy. You can make him positive rather than wallowing in his misery of watching his dad blow his own brains out. But anyway,
sorry. Wow. Okay.
Now I gotta go. Show.
Yeah, I gotta catch up on my Arrow. Yeah.
Sorry. I apologize. Didn't mean to spoil.
So Ian, you brought up a really great breaking news story of Charlie Cox being reintroduced as the Daredevil, as the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. There are rumors that a certain Vincent D'Onofrio will be coming back. Do we still think that after this episode, we're going to see the return of Kingpin?
Totally.
Well, he is pretty closely tied with the comic from what I briefly read. So, I mean, if they do go that direction, that would be amazing. I just hope all these cameos that they're doing services the story, because what makes Hawkeye work, what made Captain America, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier work and all these other shows is that it's not getting all tied up in introducing people. It's more focused on who these characters are, what their baggage is, and how they handle it and move forward, and essentially winning more people over on Hawkeye, which I've been won over on, and that's really the important thing, more than just shoving more characters onto the screen, which I will say, I hope I do see Kingpin. That would be amazing. But as long as it's not like a distraction, you know, away from all the character development that
you'll probably get Kingpin in the last episode, Stinger, doing the old Dr. Claw thing, you know, not with a cat, but, you know, standing by a window, you know, you're going to get maybe Florence
silhouette.
You'll get the Black Widow assassin showing up, you know, she failed in her mission or whatever, and she's talking to a big, you know,
Hulk of a guy,
Hulk of a guy standing at a window, and he says, okay, you know, we've got other options or whatever, and then they turn around to the window, boom, that would be awesome, and that's how you end it, because
but that's how you transition right into Echo as well, because he was the adopted father.
Well, right. First, I want to get back to this, but Sejua has been just like commenting all the heck. Okay, so we'll go through this. I like this focus on real humans next. Marvel the Accountant, about an accountant. No superheroes.
Ben Affleck would feel about that.
Oh my god.
The accountant saves the Avengers a lot of money on weapons, reconstruction projects, etc. That's the plot. Love it.
That's the plot.
Damage control.
It's just him doing the numbers. That's it.
Are we waiting for her other shoe to fall? Like, there's
I'll get back to that in a moment.
She had a phone call, right?
Well, hold on. I want to get back to that moment because I have a theory.
Not to don't put her in this movie show. But yeah.
Also, check out the new Iranian film, A Hero. Some similarities thematically with a Hawkeye. Okay.
It's on the pile down here.
Yeah.
Whew, by the way,
don't return the money
for Hadi. Okay. I'll have to check that out. Story about truth-telling, honor, and the price of freedom. Hollywood Reporter. I've not seen it yet, but we'll in January.
You're quoting out some Justin Chang quote. Come on now.
Yeah, come on, man.
What'd you get here? Did you get some money for that, Sejua?
Right.
Yeah, get some of that ads.
Get the green checkmark tweet right there. Come on.
But look, anything that can be compared to Hawkeye, especially as a feature film, I'll definitely check out.
And from Iran.
Yes. Yeah. But I will say, getting back to this idea of the Kingpin, I feel like, they're going to use it as the end of the season 1 stinger, not necessarily the stinger, but possibly the final scene. But what I'm thinking is just a full disclosure, I finished the Matt Fraction run. My estimation of it plunged even lower than when I last talked to you guys. But I will say
it's great, isn't it?
No, I will say.
Take that, David. Cheers.
Sluncha.
I will. His timing, that was timed perfectly.
Thank you. I will say, as David disappears behind a lovely bikini, there was one truly chilling closing scene, and this is a spoiler for people who have not read Matt Fraction's Hawkeye. So pay attention to the banner down below. When this series opened, and Kate's dad goes the way of Disney dads, I was disappointed because in that run, Kate's father is very much alive. They're kind of distant. He's like a multimillionaire. You know, she comes from money. That's true in the comics and the TV show. But when he's dead at the beginning of the series, I'm like, that leaves out the potential of that wonderful closing scene involving the Kingpin. Yeah. But I'm thinking, because David, as you mentioned, Vera Farmiga takes a phone call in this episode. It would be so cool and so chilling and so kind of heartbreaking, where at the end, there's this consortium of shadowy, overlord, gangster types at a table, and they're all voting on, taking out Hawkeye officially, and, Barton and Bishop. And one of them, because it's not just, Clint, it's also Kate Bishop. Now they're both Hawkeye. In the comics, her father is revealed to be in league with the Kingpin, and he votes yes to take out his own daughter. I could see that happening with Vera Farmiga's character, and that being just a wonderful cut to black where she says, I.
Now that would be amazing. I want to know what that fight was about at the beginning of the season. That fight between, I know I keep going like almost a stupid, but like.
Oh, between the father and
between the parents, like before the attack in New York happens. I want to know, like, what was that about? There's going to be some clarity, I swear. And if there is,
it was the Disney Raiders fighting on whether he should live or die.
in this episode,
and Black Widow fighting. People care about me less. Oh, they care about me less.
Did we know what her dad in the TV series did for a living? Was he the money or was she the money?
I think she was.
Isn't it a family business?
It's a family, but they both started the
business.
Yeah.
Family business.
Okay. Because I don't know. I like
security
for some.
or?
Well, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Sort of bit like security.
Oh, it could have been all that. Yeah.
Right. I don't know if that was started after the husband died, like in the 10 years since the since the events of New York, or if that was something that happened before he died and it was something that they built together. I don't know. The vibe I got off the dad was just like, maybe he owned a construction company or something. I don't know. But I'm just wondering if that argument had something to do with his wife's ties to underground crime. Like he found out that, our entire family fortune is built on you working for the Kingpin or something like that.
Could tie into her knowing that Jack is the swordsman and playing dumb?
Possibly.
Were they in cahoots together? And this
do you think that it could be
two?
some sort of collaborative effort where she's like naive and playing this and not knowing? And
what do you mean?
Watch me dance with him. Watch me fall in love with him, and it's all a ruse.
And at the very end, or the climax, as she emerges as supervillain, Swordsman literally gets stabbed in the back.
Oh boy!
What if
Kingpin? It's Kingpin holding the sword.
It was Kingpin all along
with a heavily breathing Vincent D'Onofrio. Yes.
It was
holding the sword.
Can Vincent sing that for us? That'd be great.
What if Jack?
This episode made me wonder about like how two couples got together. So there's Eleanor and Jack. Like, how did they get together? It was because of the underground dealings that they're both in.
Yeah.
Or how did Clint and his wife get together? Because we got some interesting information about Laura there. Is she's speaking Russian. Was she a former SHIELD agent? Is that how they met? Did they meet while they were in SHIELD?
Or a former Black Widow. I don't know how long.
Or a former Mockingbird.
Yeah.
They had a Mockingbird and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. though, right?
Yeah, but we don't know if that's canon or not.
I thought S.H.I.E.L.D. I thought Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was canon.
Completely canon, right?
It's all got to be canon.
If Coulson was in the Avengers, of course it would be canon.
Yeah.
Noah was in the Avengers.
We're in multiverse territory.
Hey, in multiverse, everything is canon.
Retcon.
Oh boy.
Say
it, Mark.
What if Jack, the swordsman, is the guy who was actually undercover that Barton wanted the watch for, because the swordsman wanted the watch at the black market auction. What if they do a spin? Not saying they would, but what if they do the spin? Yeah, he's a swordsman, but what if he's the guy who's deep undercover with with it?
Could be.
I don't know. There like all this stuff with like the underground auction and the watch. I don't know. I feel like that's like red herrings all over the place. Does this watch have any significance that I should know about prior to this series? Because I don't know what's going on with this watch.
From Laura to Clint.
Never mind. It's DC.
I think the watch. No, I think the watch identifies Clint as married. Like that's the compromising thing, because the list of his family members was right there with the watch. Where somebody figured it out.
Why would you keep a printed list of your family members? That doesn't.
No. What I mean is, like, maybe on the back of the watch, it's to Clint from your darling. And it's like,
so it's a straight.
So Ronan.
But this was something else.
Let's go find it.
But there was information.
As long as it's not Tony's watch.
He said
well,
that.
I thought this was lifted from Stark Tower or something like that.
Yeah, it was from Avengers Compound.
No, I heard a rumor that Kingpin's whatever takes over the Stark Tower.
Fisk Tower.
Fisk Tower, yeah.
Fisk Tower. Do you think that the Rolex could lead him to Stark Tower turned Fisk Tower?
I think it leads him to Clint. We got that.
Yeah, it could lead
without Fisk actually being there. Do you think it could be a name drop that the tracksuit mafia has infiltrated in a way, bringing us back to Echo as a primary villain?
Yeah, might be.
Possibly.
Or am I reaching here?
No,
we're all firmly in reaching.
We're all reaching towards those multiverse portals.
Yeah,
to see what we can pull out.
This multiverse thing makes anything possible. Like, legitimately anything possible.
I apologize. No, it wouldn't be that Jack is the undercover guy, because they dug up information on him. His wife did, but I am kind of with I with you on the idea that the watch might lead to who his wife actually is or was, because it's in Echo's apartment and the watch is right next to a pad that has the names written down on it, which could lead that the watch was used and the clues that were written on the pad were because of the watch that she now had, because she already did her research. So she's got the pad right next to the watch. And then, suddenly the names and everything are on there. So maybe even though he says it's to protect someone deep undercover, maybe that's who he meant, his wife deep undercover, because nobody really knew who his family was. Even his Avengers buddies didn't know his family until they literally took a vertical jet to his farm, And
then there was that bit where he's talking to his wife on the phone and she spoke in another language to him, and then Russian. She said, remember to put like your feet up and like put on an ice pack.
And she didn't go to New York with the family, which I thought was weird, because I thought maybe, there was something going on. She's been hiding out at the farmhouse. Maybe she is undercover and on the run from whatever life she came from.
And this watch leads her.
And this watch leads you back to her, because she's been out in the farm. She didn't come to New York with the family, which I thought was it's a family trip. Oh, spend time with the kids, just you and the kids. But at the same time, we've never seen her leave the compound, so to speak.
Even in the other movies, that's right. She's always been kind of at home, unless she's being held there by some kind of like a WandaVision-esque spell.
Or like what Mark's saying, that has been their eternal getaway. Like, she's got heat, he's got heat. They have a family now that has, that's collateral damage you have to protect. So you hide every way you can.
Wait, are you trying to say that she's one of the Eternals? What was that about?
No,
getaway?
No, not that bad. No.
Hey,
yeah, it's not that boring.
Wow.
Yeah. It's Linda Cardellini. Yeah, come on.
One of the things I liked, you mentioned putting your feet up, Mark, and kind of like the hints for recovering from the wear and tear of battle. I was relieved that they sidestepped the cliche of like he goes to the freezer and gets out a bag of peas. It's all like frozen alcoholic beverage mix.
Hell yeah!
He just tapes to his body all over.
And then they go drink it all, which is the best.
Yeah. They do the ugly melts off. You can drink it.
They do the ugly sweaters and the movie marathon.
I also like that this is it's a budding, a nice platonic relationship, because I think the obvious choice, because they have chemistry, Steinfeld and Renner, and then their characters do, but we are constantly reminded that Clint Barton is very much married and in love with his wife and just wants to get back to his family. He doesn't even see Kate Bishop, as far as we can tell, as anything other than someone he's trying to protect and
like his daughter.
Politely get out of his life. But I like that, because I feel like any other show, they would have been like, oh, my wife cheated on me back with, from on the farm. So now I need to go into the arms of someone else. And hey, you're here. Let's do some trick shots down the hall. You know what I mean? Huh?
This is 2 Marvel shows out of 4 that don't have a heavy romantic angle here, which is kind of
that begs the question: do we really need a heavy romantic angle to be a valid piece?
I mean, in WandaVision, it makes sense. That's huge thing.
And Falcon and Winter Soldier,
Loki didn't need it. Loki did not need it.
Loki did not.
Yeah, Loki did not need to make out.
Loki have it.
You acknowledge the bisexuality between both of them, and you keep going. You keep going, and you don't turn that into a heterosexual thing, especially with yourself. What are you doing?
Well, that's the thing, is I don't think they ever did. I think that was like this meta joke that Loki is just so in love with himself.
Even so, it's shoved down our throats. I'm with Annie on this one. But then Falcon Winter Soldier.
No, I like the whole mentor. It's more of a mentor student type of thing. You get the impression that as much as he's hesitant, he sees potential in Bishop. He really does. But you could also tell now that we know that the confession, especially in the living room during the party, he's afraid to have her go down this path and become him, basically. That's why he's all hesitant about, but he knows the talent's there. And she's just all gung-ho, wants to get into it. And maybe that's similar to the way he was initially. And, and so I like that mentorship. And we don't need the romantic. I'm very happy that it's not there, because, that she's not even like holding the hidden crush you know.
Right.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
just
I
a
was waiting
case
for
of
that all
she's
season.
getting to hang out with her hero. I
mean,
also like that they're. I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
I was gonna say she always wanted to be like him. She didn't want
Right.
to be with him.
Right.
Yeah.
But I did like one of the things I like about the relationship too is that even though they kind of bicker and they would rather be other places than having to fight their way through this mystery, they are impressed by each other. You know,
Yeah.
when Clint is showing, they're decorating the tree and he's doing the thing with the little coins, like, well, I could knock someone out from 20 feet away. And she's like, show me. And then she does. And she, like, her face just lights up, like, you have to tell me how you did that.
Right.
And there are moments when she frustrates the hell out of him, but she also, kind of gets the job done. And he's like begrudgingly like, well, that's, wow.
Yeah, the whole elevator scene was beautiful. It's just, okay, so you're gonna rappel up, you're gonna go on there, and he's like, yeah, I got a different plan. Oh, do you want help with those bags? Just what?
But that actually brings me to something that I want to pick up on from what Annie was talking about, I think last episode, because the issue of kind of deafness has been big in the first couple of episodes, and it's more underplayed here, partially because we don't see a lot of this. Isn't a Maya-centric episode, and it's not really played up for effect with Clint. But getting back to what we were talking about with Marvel kind of stepping away from big budget crazy CGI spectacle, in this episode there's something that it's a story plot point that opened up my imagination and made me really curious in a way that the last several Marvel movies have not. When Kate enters Maya's apartment, immediately she's beset by these weird strobing things, and she just like instinctively shoots like arrows, the putty arrows at them to block them out. And she's like, I don't know what this is. Are they bombs? Like, what is going on? And then Clint figures out when he realizes it's Maya's apartment. No, because she's hearing impaired. Those are, that's like the alarm system.
And that's a real thing. That we have deaf friends, and even in my dorm, our fire alarms are equipped with the flashing lights. So same thing with deaf folks, hard of hearing folks use that for doorbells. They use it for telephones. They use it for almost anything that emits noise that they can't hear or hear at a higher.
It's a visual thing.
Yeah, it's a visual thing. Which I think it's just having that be a very real part of your series while not overplaying it and making it so insistent that it feels forced. That's a really nice touch. And Alakwa Cox, I believe her name is, if I'm saying it correctly, she is deaf. So I would not be surprised if there was not creative input from her from behind the scenes saying, hey, Maya as a deaf person should be using XYZ, because I'm sure that, knowing Marvel's past with dealing with disabilities, I don't know if that's something they could do on their own.
Yeah.
True.
And I think it's really cool how delicately everything is touched. And it's
I'm sorry.
It's so well done that it's authentic.
Yeah.
And that's where the show, as the show does, it finds its strength in authenticity. I haven't felt like anything has been forced except for that first opening scene. I just think that there's a lot of genuine aspects on all cylinders firing at the way that the show is being approached. Being able to introduce this just as they did with Charlie Cox being blind in Daredevil, that was a really great way to look at that too and say this is a blind man, but he's not, and here's a deaf woman, but she's not, and this is a deaf man, but he's coming to terms with his deafness, and that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's great how it doesn't define them, and I like how it's sort of connected to his past. There was a little moment in this episode where he takes out his hearing aid, and then he's getting flashes of, having to let Black Widow go and all of his regret, and it was similar to an earlier flash where Kate's asking Hawkeye or Clint, whichever you prefer, tomato, like how he lost his hearing, and they had those quick cuts of him getting slammed through the glass and all that other stuff, and it just shows he's kind of shell shocked from everything, and it's a great way to kind of implement it.
And Mike, you brought up that scene, these Black Widow flashbacks. I think in any other way that they could have done this, it would have been seen as too much or too cheesy or too forced. But the way that we are microdosing his trauma and his grief and his inability to let go is done really well just because of the timing and how it's brought up. You know, they're sitting down watching Christmas movies, and he suddenly snapped back, and he suddenly flashed back, and you feel that sense of Christmas warmth right before being reinstated, and it doesn't feel like it's being jerked around or done like, hey, by the way, remember that he lost his best friend. By the way, hey, the stone. She was the one that fell for the stone. There's none of that. And I think that, you know, we knew that this was coming. I think if you've been following even the Avengers movies, you know that there's that camaraderie between them. I think that this is the best way for them to approach that. I can't see them doing it any other way with enough grace where they're honoring that relationship but not making it a central focal point.
Right.
Well, also, there's a deliberate callback to that. There's two callbacks to the Natasha moment. One is the obvious, scene from Infinity War. And the second is that rooftop fight when Kate goes over the edge and then Clint, he looks down and she's kind of like suspended by this cable. We are meant to recall that whole scene with Natasha helpfully because they put that in the show a few minutes earlier. But I think in another context, in a lesser show, he would have been like, oh yeah, that's right. I didn't want to let Natasha go, so I'm definitely not going to let Kate go. I'm going to reach down and bring her up. No, he cuts her loose.
He cuts the rope.
He does the exact opposite thing to do what he feels is necessary to, I guess, save her, to get her out of the harm's way of whatever he's dealing with up on that roof.
I like how she goes right back up, though.
Yeah,
right. She gets up there very quickly too. I don't know.
It's like, wow.
She sure does.
It's so easy to get up to those rooftops.
Yeah. Can we also
take the elevator?
Can we also appreciate the fact that Echo, our main badass villain, okay, in every other superhero film, we usually just see the villain in their lair. She's got a regular apartment. There's a laundry basket out. You come in. I almost thought they were going to play like, oh, this watch was picked up by just someone off the street and went, because, and it's a good thing. I'm just saying that normally we're used to seeing like the big bad guy villain have either an immaculate, apartment where they keep their weapons in that. And you walk in and that apartment felt like just a lived in someone's home. And I love that, the fact she had just the notes on a piece of pad of paper. The watch was not in some cabinet in some locked where you got to do some fancy whatever. It's sitting on her end table, for crying out loud. I loved that because it goes along with what we were talking about, I think, overall, in that it grounds it a little bit and it doesn't make it such like a film spectacle, like a superhero spectacle. It's showing you these are
there's no
people.
Volcano layers.
Yeah.
That would be good. That would be
also,
it would be cool though.
But the other cool touch is that Echo's not even home when this happens. You almost get the feeling that she's out doing something with the tracksuit folks and she gets an alarm, like an alert on her phone or whatever, that her house alarm has been tripped, and then she it's like, I gotta go, and she goes back, and she goes by herself, which I thought was interesting. She doesn't show up with a whole bunch of goons. But okay, I do want to, because we have some comments here.
We got some plugs.
Yeah, I was going to say, everybody, hold on to your bathtub drains because we got a plug. All right. So, the Secret Society for Slow Romance comes out in January now. More info next week. We should do a Greatest Critics discussion on it. Let me know anyone who wants a screener. Definitely check it out, everybody. It's not quite comic book material, so if we were to do a round table, it would have to be something else. I don't know what that would be.
Plug.
Yes,
we can put our critic hats back on around here. Yeah.
Romance, it does have romance. Yes, for people who can only handle that, and older folks, maybe not Mike. Wait,
no erotic thrillers. There it is. Boom! Hit that finger.
Let's talk about Benedetta.
Yeah,
wow, that's a film. Yeah,
I want to see that so bad.
Cinema.
I want to see that too.
Cinema.
Also, new long essay coming out on Friday about minimalist movies and Marvel movies with mention of Slow Romance movie. Link will be at my Twitter. Okay, and I will leave a link to Sujiwa's Twitter. No, probably not from the Hollywood Reporter. But we also have, this is, I believe, is a new listener,
first time caller here.
unless it's Will in disguise. So
He
I'm
can't
try
spell
and get
like
this.
that.
Absitz bin Sanin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Hello there. What T-shirt does Ian and David wear now with full screen?
I don't know
What are you
that
wearing,
means.
David?
Show the T-shirt here, Bob.
Oh, nice.
Bob
Bob
Dylan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Real life superhero. Dig it.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
I'm wearing an Avengers comic book cover T-shirt available probably still at Five Below. That's where I get
There
all
you
my
go.
T-shirts because I'm too
There you
cheap to
go.
buy at Target.
And I'm wearing the Wisconsin superhero flannel man.
There
There you go.
There you
Yeah.
go.
There
Oh,
you go.
instead of
Yeah.
Swordsman Jack, you're Lumberjack. I love it.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
lovely.
boy.
Actually, I was wondering, Annie, when you started this, we started these episodes. You mentioned how big of a fan you were with Hawkeye and Bishop and that. How do you feel the series has been going so far? Because you're like the mega fan, and I was.
Oh,
just
I'm loving
wondering-
it. I'm loving
Yeah.
every minute of it. Like this is my highlight of my week. I cannot wait. You know, it's especially with my semester winding down and feeling that pressure of finals and making sure everything is in order with the holidays and everything coming up. This is my time to de-stress. This is my hour away from reality, and I
Nice.
really am just getting a kick out of this. This is everything. Like I said, 12-year-old me would love seeing this. 22-year-old me loves seeing this. I love Kate Bishop. I really do. And I knew I was going to like her just because I was a fan of the way that Matt Fraction portrayed her, and seeing her brought to life through Haley Steinfeld, she's perfect for the role. I really do enjoy what she's doing.
so good.
I really do think that she is hitting the bullseye with this. And I've always gone against the grain with the public commentary on Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye. I've always really liked him as Hawkeye. He's always just struck me. Again, I love the feeling of the everyday street hero. I love that intimacy that you get with the personality. And I'm also a really big Matt Fraction fan. I know I said it 100 times before. I'll say it 100 times more. But that's one of my favorite runs of all time. And watching that, even though David Aja or David Aha should be compensated for his work, seeing that brought to small screens on a mainstream scale where you're not digging, you're not hunting, or you're not doing your own means of figuring this out and trying to actually get into the full fleshed out version of who these people are and why you need to care about them. This is me getting to celebrate that weekly again and relive that. And I think that if I looked at myself a decade ago and said, hey, you're gonna see this, I would, that would be the only thing I think about for the next 10 years. But yeah, this is, I love hearing what you guys have to say about this. And I know I play more spectator when you guys are driving the conversation, but I think that a lot of my friends outside of you guys, because you are my friends, know that I am such a big fan of this series. And I really, I grew up loving Marvel, and I grew up loving the series and loving these characters, and finding my own confidence and voice through them. And one of my best friends is in London right now, so she's in Paris right now, so she gets to see it a little bit earlier. I wake up on Wednesdays with a text from her from like 3 or 4 in the morning, and she goes, "I can't wait for you to see this." It makes me so happy that I am so associated with this in such a positive light, and that there's that connection. That, well, this is not my identity and it doesn't consume every waking moment of my day and my life, that people can look at that and go, hey, that reminds me of them. They're really going to enjoy this. This is something that they would like, and being able to find that sense of community and camaraderie and friendship through that, that's something that just keeps me watching these shows, keeps me coming back to them. I remember when the Hunger Games came out, I was snapped into that I need a bow and arrow right now phase. That was me, and I have my old compound bow sitting in my basement at home.
Nice.
For me, it was Nicolas Cage and
And I'm so ready to break out.
I got a story about that movie, but
but yeah, I am absolutely loving this, and I'm absolutely loving watching everyone I know who is keeping up with the series fall in love with it just as I did, and it takes me back, and it's something that I am proud to watch happen.
Speaking of keeping up, who is Jack's favorite musician?
Is that why you're wearing a Bob Dylan shirt?
No.
I was gonna say Bob Dylan, but that was
remember who he name
go-to.
drops, and they're talking about meeting your idols.
Oh, yes, he mentions Bob Dylan.
No,
So
Huey Lewis.
Huey Lewis, yeah.
So he's gonna kill someone.
I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Huey Lewis. I missed
You like Huey Lewis?
That's what you watch the show with subtitles.
Well, not only is it Huey Lewis, but when he says Huey Lewis and we're talking Christmas time, I was having flashbacks to American Psycho. So
that's what I was thinking.
I think their best album is Hip to Be Square.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know. Score. Yeah.
We're not going to get into a Huey Lewis debate.
But interestingly enough,
I hope Huey Lewis pops up in Spider-Man.
Interestingly enough, Huey Lewis is also losing his hearing.
Hey.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Just really quick to add what Annie said, I have liked Hawkeye as well. I always felt he got shortchanged. That's why I'm happy to see this series, because he's one of the characters. Black Widow got her movie. It was a little late. I wish it would have been earlier, but those two characters, especially though Barton, just got shortchanged in the films. He was just the guy who could shoot well, but he never really got even the moment in Endgame where that's like the first time you're like, oh my god, they're doing something with it.
You make a really good point, because I think that there wasn't that personality that we're seeing now, and I think that it's easy to justify that lack of attention that was paid by the studios when writing this character. Even those snippets, like going back to 2015, throwing it back to Age of Ultron, where he's having that heart-to-heart with Wanda, and you're like, wow, okay, this is who we should be seeing. This is who it's about. This is his, and Renner knows that. Renner is a fantastic, you might not like him as a person, and that's fine. Jeremy Renner, whatever the hell that was. But at the same time, he knows what he's doing with this character. And I think that this is something he's been patiently awaiting.
Well,
if I were him, having to stick, didn't he almost leave?
Yeah,
I believe he almost abandoned the franchise
after the first movie. He's like, "You got to do more with my character."
And that's him advocating for himself for this character that means so much to so many people is finally paying off.
Well, I think that's what the team in the comics. That's what the team books were all about: is to give more space and room for these kind of supporting characters like Black Widow, Vision, Scarlet Witch, and that's what those team books were for, because Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, they all had their own books. So they had separate Avengers. But when you get the team, you could focus a little bit more on, Hawkeye and Steve Rogers working out in the Avengers mansion, or they're all having dinner or something like that. And so that's what those team books were for. And that's what I liked about Age of Ultron, is they're all hanging around trying to lift Thor's hammer. Who's the first who's the first one to try and lift Thor's hammer? Clint. And it's, that's what's great about the team books. And then this year we're going to have the equivalent of limited series, whatever, 6-issue limited series, 12 issues, whatever. And I appreciate them, utilizing that to flesh out these characters.
Yeah. I mean, Hawkeye, even when he got his family when we're introduced to his family, it was more of, it felt like the same moment we got in Star Trek Generations, to where they mentioned Sulu has a daughter. Yeah. It's like, when did Sulu have time for a family? Well, I guess he made time. And that's the most they ever did with it. That's what it felt like when we got introduced to Hawkeye's family, because we immediately went back to, Captain America and Iron Man's forced rivalry, So it's one of those things where even when they were trying to do a lot with them, it still felt like it was kind of like, oh yeah, there was that. Now let's get back to these guys.
Right. Right. So one of the questions of the next 2 episodes is, are we going to have a stinger in these last 2 episodes?
Do you think that it depends on what the content is for the next 2 episodes? I think that so far I, out of habit, find myself scrolling over the extent to the end credits to make sure, hey, did I miss something before the internet decides to tell me I missed something later in the day? Make sure that it's still there. But I'm kind of like not having that sense of urgency. I like how it asks you to keep questioning things, and it keeps it fresh in your mind until next week rolls around, where you're like, wait, did that happen? Do I have to go
Right.
back and watch it? Do I have to refresh myself? Do I need to remind myself? Instead of seeing like, okay, here's like the highlight reel of what might happen in next week. It might happen, it might not. Best of luck, we'll tell you then.
Yeah.
I like having things so forward, especially with this, and because Marvel is so heavily relied on stingers and mid-credit scenes and these teasers that keep their audience engaged. I think if you can write something like Hawkeye that I'm thoroughly engaged with the show. I'm like I said before, I absolutely love keeping up with the show. It's my weekly highlight, but I think that you don't need that in that instance. Where I think with things like the Black Widow movie, where the Black movie,
Black Panther.
Black movies out
that
there.
movie.
Where you need that jumping off point. I think if you are providing enough at the very, very end, or even at a midpoint per se, where it's, oh my God, did you see that happen? What's happening next? I want to know, but also I don't want to know too much before it gives itself away.
Yeah, I mean, I think picking up on that, it's another way. I hope that we don't get any stingers because I feel like this is just another way to differentiate this from the wider MCU centric shows. This isn't a big splashy comic book show in the sense that the stinger is going to show Kingpin or something about an alien threat or something. It really is driven by the story, and you don't necessarily need that. You don't watch a soap opera for the mid-credit sequences, and I don't mean to refer to this as a soap opera in the negative sense, just that it's more character and story-based. But I do want to wrap this up because it is getting late, but I do have some questions to... nice. With some last comments from Sejiwa catching up. Emotions regarding Annie's love for the show. More proof Jack is a bad guy.
His music taste.
His musical taste.
Yep.
This is great.
Speaking of getting canceled, here's an idea. Woody Allen is the older Hawkeye, not so much into fighting anymore, just talking.
I used to shoot arrows. I shoot arrows. Arrows.
That's a very New York centric film.
Yeah, totally.
There you go. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I met Thanos, and
yeah.
I don't know what's up with that
And
guy.
I just aim and I shoot. Sometimes I look, sometimes I don't. I aim.
The relationship between him and Kate Bishop would be very different.
Well played.
Very good.
True story.
I do. We talked a little bit about David Aja. We'll get his name right one of these days.
Yeah.
Yes. But I do want to take a minute to pay respects to an artist who is still with us, but will not be with us for very long. It was announced, I think, yesterday that George Perez, the fantastic decade-spanning artist of both Marvel and DC, has been diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis is 6 months to a year, but he has decided to forego any kind of treatment and just live out his days with his family. So I am not nearly as familiar with Dave Perez's, George Perez's art. Yeah, sorry. George Perez's art as I should be. But take some time to go look up some of his stuff.
Yep.
There's Crisis on Infinite Earths. You can probably start there, and I understand he had some wonderful times on Wonder Woman, and David could probably fill us in. David, actually, I'm going to cede the floor to you for a second. What would you say the go-to? Like, I've heard about this George Perez guy. Apparently, he's a legend, but I don't know who he is. Where do you start?
I mean, his groundbreaking work with Wonder Woman, because around that time in the 80s, mid 80s, there was Frank Miller doing Dark Knight Returns, there was John Byrne doing Superman, and then George Perez was basically redoing Wonder Woman and making her more mythology based and everything. And it was just, I mean, that's how I got to know him, because at that time all these new books were coming out of the Legends miniseries spinoff. And it was amazing, and it was so different, and his artwork is so detailed. One thing about George is he never leaves in his panels, he never leaves like background to be like all one solid color. He puts, it's not overly detailed, but he puts the characters in a placement, and JLA Avengers, if you looked at Twitter lately, there's a lot of basically petitioning of Marvel and DC to get together and put out a nice hardcover of JLA Avengers and have the proceeds all go to, you know, George or at least cancer research. That would be awesome. JLA Avengers was a 4-part crossover. It was basically JLA versus Avengers, you know. So you had, like, you know, Thor going up against, you know, Superman, Aquaman going up against Namor. You know, it was awesome. But yeah, he had an Avengers run. He had an amazing run with Marv Wolfman on New Teen Titans in the 80s as well. But yeah, I've hung out with him. I've met him. He, you know, in my volunteering work at conventions for the Hero Initiative, he would often be a kind of like our main guest for the whole weekend. Always the nicest guy. Always just, you know, surrounded by fans, and it was never, you know, tired or fatigued about it. Always had great stories. Just one of the nicest guys.
Yeah, I don't think I ever met him, but I had seen him. You know, he was a staple at a lot of conventions when I used to go, and always, you know, whenever I think about George Perez, and yes, he's still with us, but, you know, it's just weird to think about him, you know, not being with us. But I always think of that smile. Like every photo you ever saw with him, he had like a big, like, you know, wide kind of embracing personality. So yeah, folks, definitely check out some of those recommendations. Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more about George Perez in the months and years to come. But
there is listed in Amazon. It's coming out, I think, in maybe March. It's called, I think it's Absolute Wonder Woman by George Perez, and I think it's collecting like the entire run. So it's like a large hardcover. Those
Absolute editions are amazing. But all right, well, I'm going to end it here, gang. So thank you all for this jam-packed episode of Hawk Talk. Yes, we'll be back next week for episode 5. It might be a little bit shorter because we'll have some other things to talk about after that show, if you know what I mean. And yeah, so I am once again Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Mike Crowley of 25 Years Later, and you'll probably agree, Annie Banks of Chuckload of Comics and Movie Web, Don Shanahan of 25 Years Later, David Fowley of Keeping It Real, and Mark the Movie Man of the Spoiler Room and Special Mark Productions. Sorry, Don Shanahan, also of Every Movie Has a Lesson and the Cinephile Hissy Fit podcast. You see, when it's late and you don't have everything in your little name tag there.
Multiplicity.
You could just call me No Press Screener Mark, because I'll be the only one out of this whole group who will not be seeing it.
To bow out.
Well,
no, it's okay.
Yeah. He's like +1.
I actually had tickets to like a 3:00 showing of the Thursday show, and then I found out my son's schedule, the way the college had the calendars messed up. He actually has a week of exams. He's a huge Spider-Man fan. I gave up my tickets because I want to see it first with him and experience it with him together. I know. I'm going to wait till he's back home for winter break, and then we'll go see it together as a family for the first time, because I don't want to see it. Yeah.
And you're going off the grid as of the 14th, right? Until your son gets back and you can
I'm going to have
movie.
to like just disconnect my internet though and just avoid.
Live in the woods. You'll have all the Christmas trees you want there.
All right. Well,
down on flannel, buddy. Yeah.
So last word from Sejua, just because it's praising this great show. Better than regular. I think that's a great way to end it.
Hey, as average as an actress as Florence Pew.
Talk. Better than regular.
Right. Before we go, odds over under that she's gonna cry in this one.
Yeah, she'll put it in her midsummer face.
She's gonna cry. She's gonna do her midsummer face.
Maybe.
Oh no, she.
No, no crying.
Maybe.
She's
Well, no, she's got
tears,
that stone thing. You know, she's going to be on a mission of vengeance. It depends on how much time we actually get with her. I think it would be great is if this is the first and last time we see her in this season, and then just go back to the regular plot. She pops up in season 2, but that's wishful thinking on my part. I'm gonna cut it here. I promise. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining Hawk Talk. We'll be back next week live at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, click that reminder, check out all of my wonderful, talented friends and guests, information down below in the description, and we will see you next time. I'm going to try and do this all slick.